Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Inquisitive Minds podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Johnny Smith. Today, we will be talking about the real Men in Black. And my guest joining me, you remember them from the previous episode. Their YouTube channel is One Candle Society, and their podcast can be heard on all streaming platforms, Talking with Shadows. Please welcome Vic Waitley and Marcus D. Hey, Marcus, Vic, welcome back to the program. I'm glad to have you. Today, we're going to be talking about the real Men in Black.
Yes, and we're super
always a pleasure,
excited
man. The audience loved you guys. You happen to be my most listened to episode.
I'm just glad you guys enjoyed it. We appreciate it. I mean, we always love coming on your podcast, man. You're a blast. You're fantastic. Mm-hmm. You're super knowledgeable about the stuff that you talk about, man. So we love talking to you. So you'd be surprised.
I'm glad you set me up. I'm glad you set me up for failure like that right now, because the topic, the Men in Black, like we discussed off air, it's very difficult to search because of fucking Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith.
Oh, yes. Yes, it is. Trying to just type in Men in Black, you're literally just page after page after page of just seeing just stuff from that movie.
And I'm not totally convinced that's not intentional.
Yeah, like I think they did it that way. So if you're really trying to look at it, it makes it even more difficult to do. Like we had to go like off the rails, and honestly, I didn't do a whole lot of like research, like just even on the internet. Like we even went off the beaten path for ourselves and was downloading like books. I know we went old school, like downloading books and stuff to research this topic.
Yeah, I think we both read books by Nick Redford, but we read different ones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I agree with the propaganda because propaganda is always hardest to see when it's entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Although for that movie, I thought it was kind of funny that Tommy Lee Jones did that just straight face thing the entire time, which is kind of like a little bit of a nod to Real Men in Black a little bit, but they don't seem to get humor.
Yeah.
I didn't get that movie's humor. I guess the first one's okay. I'm not going to go out of my way to watch it, but the rest of them were just... But okay,
I went into him as a fan of Will Smith, and then I like suspended disbelief and just rode out with him. But I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent talking about this movie. The real thing, guys. Start us off, Vic.
Okay. When it comes to the Men in Black, it is a big topic, and there are a lot of stories coming from a lot of different angles. You can address this as a ufologist, and you're going to come back with a certain description of the Men in Black. If you come at it just as a general paranormal investor, you're going to walk away with something a little different as well. In a little bit of a way, it's a bit of, we suffer from a lack of information in many ways when it comes to the Men in Black. I can give you a description. I can talk to you about their modus operandi. Even after we've talked about on our channel Men in Black many, many times, I'm still at times at a lack for an overarching goal for them, though. Mm-hmm. Like it seems that in many ways, everything doesn't always quite add up, but we can still talk plenty about them.
Like even when you try to when you try to talk about what their goal is, that could even shift when the real story of talking about the Men in Black, like when it really even starts.
And in many ways, they're interested in much more than just ufology.
Yeah. Like you will run into Men in Black stories involving Bigfoot, ghosts, alchemy. Like that was the one thing that even surprised me when I began researching like Men in Black stories. The number of times like alchemists from back in the medieval ages were describing having these mysterious encounters with men in total black garb showing up in the middle of the night to discuss like alchemical feats with them. So it really just depends on where you want to start.
Well, the strangest thing I think about these Men in Black, quote unquote, is a lot of times I thought they were just normal humans, government agency, but they seem to be described many times as like not of this world, like they don't quite understand how to fully function as a human.
Mhm.
Me and Marcus have been talking this one out a lot here lately since we've been researching it. Like, when we come at the Men in Black phenomena from different angles, when I come at it, I'm looking at it as just the paranormal aspect of the Men in Black, the ones that can do weird things, the ones that aren't quite human. He was taking a more view of looking at it as the whole phenomena of both the Men in Black and the G-Men sort of angle to it.
Yeah, like I really wanted to see. I really wanted to see like what are the pedal like when they show up. What do they do?
Mm-hmm.
And like what are they trying to do? And can you discern any sort of pattern from this, from what their behaviors are? But going back to what you were talking about, at least with their look and this alien look, you're absolutely correct. A lot of stories of people encountering these Men in Black, especially the ones with like weird, bizarre powers that people will encounter and weird abilities, have this pale, waxy skin with no eyebrows.
Yeah, usually no lips, sometimes solid black eyes, sometimes missing appendages, noses, ears. There's some very peculiarities, even if we're just talking about their physical appearance. Like, oddly enough, like if I was to, do you have your glass?
Yeah.
Here, you can go ahead and get yourself a
Yes.
glass while I'm talking. If I'm talking just in their appearance, and I'm trying to break them down to what in folklore they match up to, I come back with some odd things, like things that you don't normally associate with the Men in Black. Like, they are very similar to revenants, like undead revenants of they have pallid skin, they talk in peculiar ways. They show up usually garbed in black.
Would you agree? Would you agree that a lot of times they're almost described as like a smaller Slender Man?
Yeah, I can see that because it's usually they're described as being pallid, gaunt, tall. Many people will even express like how shallow their shoulders are, or how thin their fingers are.
Mm-hmm. How cold they are to the touch.
See, that's so weird. And when I came into learning about them, I really had the mindset that it was like, okay, what's the United States up to now? But I don't think it's a United States driven program. Like, and program might even be the weird thing to call it, wrong thing to call it. But like, I don't know what the hell these guys truly want, and I don't know what the hell like their motivation is even.
There are similar Men in Black accounts all over the world. Particularly, I think some of the easiest stories of them to find are in the UK, is probably right after the United States, and Japan would be another place where you can see stories of these guys as well. Well, I guess Russia too would be another one. It's not too far after that as well.
But I'm with you. I don't think they're part of the government program. I think they're off in their own. They're doing their own thing.
Outside of like telling people to stop either talking about aliens or investigating aliens, what else motivation do they seem to have? Because I don't like that's the thing. I can't wrap my head around them.
You know what it is? They're after our seed.
They're not the ones after. Okay,
they're trying to cover it up.
They're right trying to cover it up. But oh man, when it comes to like an actual motive, it seems like they want to show up. They are going to try to cause some sort of intimidation, fear, utilize threats, sometimes even through supernatural means. But the thing is, they seem kind of sloppy and not great at it. That's the weird thing. Is like I almost feel like either their job is to cover things up and they're just not very good at it, or they have a wide range of skills and we're only getting the stories from the bad ones, or they're really part of the whole act and play altogether, that even they're coming to like show up and tell you not to talk is just a way of confirming to you that, oh yes, this was something real, and that's their goal in it. I don't know which one of these is true, but I feel like it's likely one of those three.
I think that in the end of the day, I think it is to cover up paranormal phenomenon. I think it is to cover up what is really going on with paranormal phenomenon, no matter what aspect of the paranormal or what you think that they may be. If you think they're aliens, demons, revenants, or that they're actual just G-men that show up telling you to stop looking into what you're doing. I think at the end of the day, it is to cover up the real narrative of what's going on with the paranormal.
What did you find most?
Well, here's a wild thought that might.
Sorry.
Here's a wild thought that might take you on a tangent. That's all right. With that, with them potentially just playing a role of covering up all things paranormal, I think that leads to a question of like, maybe we don't understand the paranormal at all, because if it's organized enough to have some type of hit team or silence team or cleanup team, then that leads a whole new opening.
Do you want to fill this one or?
Yeah. Okay. So not too long ago, we were going to do a top 5 video for our YouTube channel, and it was just the top 5 most like unexplainable things. What was it like in the paranormal? And number one, the number one was that everything is connected. Like in the end of the video, it's all connected. Bigfoot's connected, ghosts is connected, UFOs are connected. Like it's all connected in some way, shape, or form. Like when you really boil it down to it. Like, because when you see Men in Black, and like the sightings of Men in Black, right after that, poltergeist activity can start. When you see stories of UFO, Bigfoot stories pop up as well at the same time.
Flying humanoids, bring curses.
Yeah. And how it all seems to be connected at the end of the day. And shortly after that, my not very old computer completely crashes and we lose a lot of research.
Yeah, we lose all of our videos. Everything that was actually on that computer was just straight gone.
Lost.
And I think
that's incredible.
I think that story sums up a lot of it, that the paranormal, it's not a series of different ideas that each exist upon their own island. There's some sort of meta particle that connects each one to another. The problem is whatever this connection is so elusive, we've been yet to establish. Just whatever this weird activity is, there's a connection between all of it. And each one can lead into another one through a domino sort of effect. But what it is totally unknown. And Men in Black run that gambit as a really good example. Like Men in Black, we already mentioned poltergeist activity occurring right after a Men in Black showing up at your house is very common. Shadow people showing up alongside Men in Black is very common. There's even a few examples of Men in Black having bargeist with them. Like some people call them hellhounds. But why would that be? Why would these guys who are here to tell you to stop talking about UFOs have bargeists that they can like just with them?
So like when you look at so many of the different parts of the paranormal, like almost like a web where you're connecting things together, at the end of the day, the one thing that will connect all of them together is the Men in Black phenomenon.
Today's episode is sponsored by Tenacious Detail, your mobile detailing solution in the Pittsburgh area. We know it's cold out. We know you don't want to go somewhere, wait in an uncomfortable room or office. That's why we bring the detail to you. Have your car cleaned at the comfort of your home or office. Give us a call today at 724-498-9942. Now offering 20% off to all rideshare drivers. So if you drive Uber, Lyft, Amazon, Uber Eats, Lyft Eats, whatever is going on out there. If you're driving somebody's medication, I don't care if you got a pizza in the back for your brother-in-law, come on in, get 20% off any service. Or you can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/tenaciousdetailpgh. Well, this is a great opportunity to promo an old episode. I had West Virginia MUFON state investigator Fred Saluga on, and he actually did a whole episode on the UFO Bigfoot connection, and kind of started talking about how he believes Bigfoot to be interdimensional, as well as aliens. Like that's turning into a different conversation in the MUFON world, but a lot of people are turning towards like aliens being interdimensional. That being said, like kind of piggybacking on my last question with the organization, it comes off as like the Men in Black would be a council. So, but that's all we're seeing. We're seeing, different ghosts, Bigfoot, paranormal experiences. Then we're seeing the Men in Black. I would like to know, or even ponder, who's like pulling the strings. You know what I mean? Like what type of entity, organization is really going on behind all these paranormal things that we only get glimpses of.
Oh, I would love to know that myself.
Yeah, it's one of those things that me and Vic, when we first started like getting into the paranormal together, one of the things we said was like, well, what if the Men in Black show up? What are we gonna do? And we're like, I would ask to join them.
As for an application.
Is it like online, or do you guys do like paper? Like what is it? Like, you don't know somebody who's got their finger on the pulse, man. They would have the finger on the pulse of what's going on in the paranormal.
It'd be the fastest way to get answers.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know. Like, I don't know if every single Man in Black is possibly connected to the exact same organization or the exact same thing. Because if you really look at Men in Black stories, they pop up like easily, the most easy from like the 1950s up to like say the 70s and the 80s. I think a lot of stories involving them. And if you think of any real, I don't know, like business person or anybody like middle class, like they're typically going to be wearing like a suit.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but Dan Aykroyd actually told a story that he was recording a show and was essentially being watched, and the show got shut down by the quote unquote Men in Black.
Right after a call from Britney Spears.
Right, yes. It was 2002. It was going to have a show called Out There, I think is what it was supposed to be called. Mm-hmm. Which a lot of people don't know how into the paranormal that dude actually is.
Oh, yeah. He's a real cool guy.
What happened to him... Yeah, what happened to him made me honestly think about like what I think is what's going on with the Men in Black phenomenon now. Like maybe from the G-Man perspective, like if you look at like is it like a human government agent? Like what are they doing? Because I think nowadays it's much easier to mess with somebody like electronically or over the internet than having to have that in-person contact, which you had to have to do anything, say like in the pre-90s. You literally had to go threaten the person. You had to threaten the person in person, rather than now when you can break their computer or get their TV show canceled.
Oh yeah, nowadays if you really wanted to mess someone up, you wouldn't show up and ever just give a threat. That's a very inefficient way of doing things. And yet there are still Men in Black encounters where that happens. But a much more effective way to do it would be, hey, I've gotten into your computer. I have all your information. If you have anything you were trying to hide on there, I'll expose it to everybody. Even if you're a squeaky clean person, I have all your bank account information. I'll disclose that to people who you don't want. That is a much more powerful threat. That is how you get someone to comply. The thing is, going to someone and making a threat at them, especially someone who's passionately involved in a field that they think is a form of seeking the truth, are very rarely ever going to be cowed by a threat.
Yeah, like if you look at
anything to reinforce.
Yeah, like if you look at John Keel, the patron saint of investigating the paranormal.
Choose to Kill.
Yeah, Choose to Kill. He was threatened so many times by the Men in Black. Like he got threatening calls. He ran into him several times. Never stopped him once. It just made him keep going.
Mm-hmm. It just reinforced that he's on the right path.
The whole mythos of the Men in Black, like the stories and experiences that you'll read about and you'll research, fall in line because there's so many that are just riddled with, hey, I saw the Men in Black. Hey, I'm going to retract my statement. Hey, I'm going to retract my retraction. People constantly going back and forth. So, and on top of that, I hate to say this because I deal with a lot of people in the field, but not everybody's that reliable. So it's already coming off as crackpots that are retracting statements. How can you make heads or tails of which is which?
Oh yeah, I mean, we ran into that several times. Like even working at the hospital that we worked at, where people would come in all the time talking about saying that they felt like they were being followed by the government, or they thought they were being monitored and things like that. We ran into that all the time. You know,
Okay, okay. I mean that's fair enough. It's just these guys will kind of like who was the what was the name of the guy who technically did the first Men in Black experience? I think it was like 46. Do you guys know who I'm talking
hey,
about?
yes, I do. I got it pulled up right now. I do. I sure do. It was 47 actually. Harold Dowell.
Okay.
That's the story that typically people point to is June 27th, 1947. I have a date, so I had notes.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of people will say that that is the beginning point of looking at the Men in Black phenomenon as we have now, because it's shortly post Roswell.
Although there are plenty who argue that it pre-exists.
It pre-exists that. It's like Roswell. It's the beginning of the new age of the Men in Black story.
So it's like potentially how, okay, someone finally spoke up. We can all speak up about our experiences type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or it was just the embers that started the fire,
Yeah.
that everyone thought they were each experiencing something isolated. Like, think about our static people stuff.
Yeah.
I had a static person encounter, and I happened to have shared it with someone on an interview much like this. And the person interviewing was like, actually, I've had one of those too, but since I've never heard of anyone else having one, I've always kind of kept it to myself. And then we found tons of other people who've encountered them.
Yeah.
Well, let me stop you right there. I know this is about Men in Black, but I'm curious about that because I don't know much about static people. Can you just give me a quick rundown?
Very little to know.
Yeah, we did a whole video. We did a video on them.
We were being interviewed by Knock Once for Yes. Lil had asked me for my earliest paranormal encounter. I explained just very quickly about a person being made of static, rising up from under my bed while I was taking a nap with my mother and father. I was like in preschool, maybe at that point, me not being able to wake them up. I hid under the covers and it went away. And she's like, just a guess, like, are you serious? And then she's tells me her story of encountering a static person, and that prompted us to do a video on it. And we've had tons of people come forward since then that they've also had encounters with them. For the most part, we are still dealing with a very limited pool of information when it comes to static people, but it seems for the most part people kind of see them, run into them, and then they vanish. There's not a strong modus operandi we have so far for them.
Think like a shadow person, like made of just TV static, which is even getting hard to talk to people, like, since TV static's not really much of a thing as much anymore.
That's actually what my next question was going to be. Like, do you mean like TV static? Okay,
Yep.
That's very odd, man. That's some different stuff right there.
Yeah, another name for them is dark snow people. Is another name that I've started seeing amongst people, because it's another way. Because again, we coined the term static person, I would say, because I haven't seen another person describe it yet. I could be wrong, but dark snow people was another phrase for it. Yeah.
Hold up. So you mean to tell me I'm speaking with the originators of the term shadow of
possibly? And to the best of my knowledge, and I don't remember much. I don't remember ever seeing anything on static people before me and Lil had talked about it. Perhaps it existed, and I just wasn't aware of it. But it's possible that we are, but it's also possible that we're not.
I'm not. Yeah. As far as we know, we're the first people that have used that term, but the other term that I've heard is dark snow people. But again, you run into this when it comes to stuff with the paranormal, because people will use different names. It's like the Hellier series that came out on YouTube, and they were looking into the Kentucky Goblin incident, and they discovered that there were several places in Kentucky that had seen similar things to the Hopkinsville Goblins,
but they're all using a different name.
So you run into that in the paranormal. That's why I use the word dark snow people, because that's another term that I've seen people use.
But when it comes to people, my main conclusion is they must be very rare, considering how few people we've had come forward with information.
I think we've pulled maybe between 10 to 20 stories in our research. Better people have fully told their stories, but more people have said they've seen them. But like 10 to 20, between 10 to 20, like personal stories I've been able to document.
But that was my first paranormal experience.
Okay.
Was this weird guy made of static, and ever since then, I've been kind of active. I started young.
Just a quick heads up and announcement. The Inquisitive Minds podcast can now be found on iHeartRadio. We can be streamed on iHeartRadio now, so check that out. And also, you can check me doing stand-up on Friday, the 26th of February, 2021, at the Tap House, the Grindstone Tap House in Brea, Ohio. That's pretty wild, man. That's definitely one I've never heard of. So these Men in Black, have they changed throughout the years? Like the stories of them changed throughout the years, or just they so varied throughout all the different stories?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, if you look at them like, what are their motives and what are they doing? They might have changed. Like if you look at, Nick Redfern, he pulled a lot of stories of alchemists in the Middle Ages that have been running into these people that were doing essentially like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood stuff, where they were transmuting things in their hands and stuff and teaching them things. If you look at it from that perspective, then they've kind of like changed over times of doing that as to now they've been, covering up all sorts of paranormal stories and stuff like that.
But I'd say for the modern Men in Black over the last like 40, 60 years, somewhere around there, I would say their modus operandi has stayed fairly consistent since.
They're usually going to show up and they're going to, again, do the same threatening thing. Now, I will say, I think that they might still be doing things that it's harder to keep track of. Like when people say, for example, if you look at like the International Space Station, that has their live feed. Anytime that there's a strange UFO on there, the feed will just cut.
Yeah, but we don't know if that has to do
with it. We don't know if that
really?
has anything to do with it. But that happens all the time. Yeah. All the time.
You can even find videos where in the background, like one of the astronauts will be talking, and you'll see a dot moving across the sky, and then it'll make a right angle turn, and then suddenly they lose the feed right at that moment.
Or you'll see people that will just disappear, or you'll see stories of people that'll have like the people show up and they'll like take their computer and stuff like their computer will crash, or will have technological problems. It's the other thing. Or if you look at what happened with YouTube recently, where a lot of paranormal channels and stuff that were posting paranormal content got hit with where they changed the algorithms, and now there's not as much traffic going in there. So I would argue that I think that Men in Black probably have changed in somewhat in their tactics of being able to hush stuff up, because now they can just do this literally from the safety of wherever their base is.
Assuming that's them.
Assuming it's them. But if I was them, this is what I'd do.
Oh, yeah. But the weird thing is they don't generally do things the smart way.
Not always.
They usually seem to opt to do things the hard way. Like, think about how static they've been over the last, 60 years. They want to still drive the same car, maintain the same dress, use the same tactics, even though the tactics, I really would say, are kind of iffy tactics compared to other types you could even do more easily if you're trying to remain covert. They seem almost stuck in a time.
Couple pushbacks on that. The first one, I will just say that I think the classic black suit is kind of like always in style. Like no matter where you're at in time, you can blend in with a classic black suit. And this is just a jump kind of back to what you were saying about, these ones that seem real sloppy, and maybe there's more that are doing better and we just don't hear about them. Here's a quick thought on the movies.
Absolutely.
Here's a quick thought on the movies. Maybe the ones that we see that are real sloppy just don't have neuralizers with them.
No, when you're going to look at that, we were actually talking about this when I first came over here. If you look at some of what they do, Vic was talking about that there's a level of like almost hypnotism that looks like it's going on, because there's a lot of stories of them doing like wide eye stares at people, They use their like pins, like clicking pins, chemical
Okay.
agents, chemical agents and things like that. And not every person is necessarily susceptible to these sorts of things. So that's what we could be seeing in many of these Men in Black stories is the stories of them doing these on people that are not as susceptible.
And it's totally possible that the only stories that make it to the surface are the stories of when they're sloppy.
Because if you really think about it, like if you look at a classic Man in Black story, like where they show up to a person and say, "Don't talk about this," it didn't work because we know about it.
Yeah.
So, like, imagine if if your boss sent you in and said, "Hey, we got this person talking about this UFO thing. Go hush them up," and you went out there once and they didn't hush up. What do you think your boss would do? Yeah, your boss would send you back. Many of these Men in Black.
On top of that, though, a lot of these people, a lot of these people that it didn't work on, they also kind of like became a level of discredited just because of the field they were in. Like, unfortunately, if you're in the paranormal field and you're in the like UFO field, you're going to get a level of discredit automatically. But then when someone's so, I want to say fervent about proving something that they can't prove, it just to the public comes off as even worse.
Yeah, especially with the bizarre things they do, because often
So
the
if
Men in
you're
Black
not,
will show up and do just really, really weird stuff.
things.
Like Ellie's a big proponent, and she's one of the people that we work through with One Candle Society. Ellie's a big proponent of they do really, really weird things just so when you tell the story and you're truthful and you add those details, no one will believe you. No one would believe you someone's doing this sort of stuff.
But if you go back to what we were talking about, that level of hypnotism, if you watched a hypnotist and you took out the knowledge of context that they're trying to hypnotize you, and you were watching this, wouldn't they look weird? Like seriously, like they're like listen to this pen, like this pin click is the only thing that matters. Like that would look so weird to you.
Or were you familiar with the like missing heart story from the Men in Black?
No, I don't think I know that one.
Okay, this is one of the ones that really made me think that there might be a level of hypnosis going on. This guy had reported seeing a UFO. A man in black showed up at his house at night, and after the guy answered the door, he's like, take the copper coin out of your pocket. And he does, and he hands it to the guy, and he starts spinning it in his fingers, and the coin turns silver. And then the coin starts becoming fuzzy, then the coin disappeared. At the same time, I kind of feel like this could be a thing where he set up for a hypnotic session and basically was like, you see this coin? The coin's silver now. Do you see the coin? Do you see it becoming fuzzy? The coin is gone now. I almost feel like what was being described there from the observer's account could be the observation of someone who is within a state of hypnosis. It seems like all these changes were very subtle, simple changes that were done at close up while listening to a guy's methodical voice. I really felt like this could have been accomplished through hypnosis.
Well, not for nothing. I always look at things as a skeptic, and I don't want to say something like that can't be ruled out through like sleight of hand magic, close hand magic.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only reason
why that's definitely something.
The only reason I didn't go close hand magic when I was listening, because that was another avenue I was examining when I was thinking about this. And the only thing that really made me steer away from that was the guy specifically describing that the coin became fuzzy and blurry beforehand. And I'm like, I don't know about close-up magic, but everything else described there really could have been. But I was along the same lines as you were there.
You know, I remember too, like other stories of paranormal researchers, and there was multiple stories of these where they were probably at a bookstore. There was a couple of these, and the person comes to them in the bookstore, and they're trying to make eye contact, but they're wearing glasses, but their eyes are like super wide open, trying to like stare them down, and when it doesn't seem to work, they run off.
Make sure you check out What in the History, where my other half, Dan Brady, and I sit down this week to talk about the one, the only Nelson Mandela. That's What in the History. We're not just cramming history down your throats. It's two friends, two comic friends, talking, joking, and actually learning about important things in history that they might not have taught you in school. Check that out. We can be found at all streaming platforms, as well as the YouTube page, Facebook, all that jazz at What in the History.
And it's very weird.
I've also heard the stories about, yeah, they're weird habits, but also like weird, like eating and drinking habits. There was one story I came across where there was multiple men in black, and they like almost kind of like proved to this guy they had a container of bleach, and then all drank from the container. It's like it doesn't like that doesn't fall in line for anything that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
I really don't think they're human.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories of them like there's I mean even stories of them like showing up to diners and things like that. There's a lot of stories of them like either bringing people to diners or people running to them in diners. And one of the things that they talk about is that they don't eat or drink anything. Sometimes.
One of the earliest stories that people have like kind of grouped underneath the Men in Black basically encounters, I think it was from the 30s. And it involves a couple men. They own a farm together, and they kept waking up in the morning, and their horse's hair was braided, and was braided so tightly that when they tried to unbraid it, the horse would whinny and wince in pain. So they just kind of generally tried to leave them for a while, but it kept going on. So they started cutting the braids out. Next thing they know is their barn starts to burn down. And they can't put it out, they can't do anything to extinguish it, and they have to just allow it to burn. The next day they wake up, and their barn's there, and none of them can explain it. But they do see a man out in the field who's just kind of walking up the road. One of them goes to talk to him to just kind of figure out what he's doing, and as he's walking up, he pulls out his corncob pipe and packs it. As he arrives on the scene, he sees that the man is dressed in all black, fairly formal attire for the time period, which would be more or less the classic Man in Black look. The man, in response, pulls out his own pipe made of silver and responds about how nice the man's corncob pipe is. They talk for a little bit about it, and he says, "I'll trade you my silver pipe for it." And of course, it's a silver pipe compared to a corncob pipe, so they do the trade. They talk for a little bit, and the man just explains, "Oh, I'm just traveling through the area," and then excuses himself. The guy takes home the corncob pipe and takes it and sets it on the mantle because it's literally one of the nicest things this guy owns now. The next morning, there's a stick there, no silver pipe. There are a lot of things in that story. The story is very hard to trace, so I'm not going to say 100% that this story is confirmable. It is from around the 30s era, if I recall from the top of my head. But almost everything about this, did either of you guys pick up on any themes within that story?
The silver?
No, not the silver. And I don't know how versed you guys are on.
Yeah, like the changing of like the reformation, I guess, overnight.
That a little bit too, but almost everything in here has the threads of a classic Fey encounter. Pixie braiding. Then you have glamoring with a pipe. Then the exchange of gifts. It's just so much of that classic story just screams Fey. It's just everything in the traditional fairy lore exists there. I'm not saying Men in Black are fairy. I'm not even saying that I entirely trust this specific story. But if this story is to be trusted, one of the things you have to say is whatever old lore was describing as being a fairy operates in similar rules as a Man in Black.
Huh. That's a fascinating story. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's so vague. I say that again.
Oh, that dove out of me because my primary focus is old world lore, like ancient lore of things. That's why when we're analyzing something, the paranormal, we're discussing it, much of my discussion is usually how does this relate to ancient lore of things? What could this be related to? Like a lot of alien and abduction stories are very similar to Fey abduction stories. Just like the Greys seem to be after reproductive abilities, That's huge in fairy folklore. Now, I'm not saying that that means greys are fairies. This could just be an ancient description of that, and man labeling what we would call now the greys as fairies.
Mm.
Or maybe they're fairies.
You'll see the same thing too with
Okay.
missing time, like
Mhm.
like same time, like missing time, seeing bizarre animals right before you encounter something like this.
Yep.
You encounter something like this too. Yeah, you'll see similar stuff like that.
Yeah, another
Well,
similarity
two-part
between.
question. With the Men in Black, the first part is once they come or appear, do they ever happen? Is it like a dark omen of any type? And the second part, specifically for you, Vic, since you said you focus on older and ancient lore, those stories of the dark robed men coming to like alchemists, what were they trying to silence them from?
Okay, what was the first question?
Are they a dark omen? So if them being a dark omen, there are many stories of people like after they have encountered seeing men in black, but still bad things befall them, either getting sick, losing money, losing opportunities. I've seen numerous things like that happen. I've seen people die. Now, whether or not that's supernatural or that's intentional, I mean, it's up to the person of whatever they want to decide. But there's many times that people have had bad things happen to them shortly after running into the Men in Black.
And for the second question,
Okay.
I'm really ashamed to admit this, but the way we split up the reading, the books that I read didn't mention this part. Those are in the books that Marcus read. But I can give you a connection between alchemy and descriptions of the Men in Black that would go back to ancient times. And that would be the description of the homunculus, which is a alchemically created human, usually described as being pallid, hairless, usually imperfect in both mind and body, and specifically lacking of a soul, as it was not created through divine means, which is not horrifically dissimilar from Men in Black. Once again, not specifically saying that they are definitely homunculi. Truthfully, I would be at a loss to give you 100% response on what they were. But that's one of the things that when I was studying Men in Black, I'm like, these guys are a little homunculi. And then after he started mentioning the alchemy story, I'm like, well, that might add a little bit.
I mean, if you look at even stories of other alchemists like that too, there was a huge element of secrecy that came with being an alchemist. Like being able to do what you did involved a lot of secrecy of keeping it secret of what you know, and keeping a secret of how to do what you do. So, once you seem to be in the know when it comes to the paranormal, what tends to happen? You keep having other instances for the paranormal. So something coming along telling you to keep your mouth shut kind of makes sense.
But since you read the parts on the Alchemist, I'm kind of curious about the answer to that question because I didn't get a chance to read those books.
There's just stories about people of alchemists having people come to them in the dead of night, wearing all black, exchanging alchemical secrets. But again, under it being that you have to keep what we're showing you secret. Like that being part of it is not communicating of what we're showing you and what you're doing. So there was
I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I didn't know what a homunculus was before this. And the way you described it, like without a soul type thing, it almost reminded me of a golem from like Middle Eastern lore. And before you finish your description, Marcus, of what they were doing, I just want to know something for you to think about. Is there any connection in the Middle Eastern world with Men in Black?
Of people seeing Men in Black, I don't know any of those off the top of my head. I think that when you start looking at places like Africa and the Middle East, you see stuff in the supernatural being more like commonplace, like in common practices and stuff. So I don't really know of any stories about stuff like that. I know stuff of like keeping stuff of like alien technology under wraps by government agents and things like that. I've seen stuff like that. I've seen
there's some connection to be drawn between them and Togoloshi.
That's true.
As in, like, Togoloshis are entities that you can utilize as secret keepers that they would usually go if, say, like, you summon a Togoloshi and ask it to, like,
all right, hold on. Let's back all the way up for people that have never heard of that, and just say what it is, and then go ahead.
It's a bit of a mix between a animistic spirit and a goblin. Imagine a dark-furred goblin that can move invisibility and do the sort of things that one would expect from a spirit. It's a common conduit that shaman or sorcerers or warlocks within African traditions can call upon, and it's especially associated with being an entity of dark magic. And you can conjure them to protect secrets. And if someone learns one of your secrets, they'll go to them and they'll intimidate them and they'll mess with their stuff and they'll foul their land. Like you're saying, I think some similarities can be drawn between a Togoloshi and Men in Black. And also, fear of Togoloshi, it's one of the things from the African traditional folklore that still holds sway today, because people are still actually very scared of Togoloshi. It's one of those things where it's considered to be fairly taboo within those areas to bring them up. And it's still a very common shaman mask as well.
Oh, I had no idea. I've never heard of that one before.
Yeah, there's some weird. If you want to dig into them, just be prepared for it to get weird, like really weird.
That happens a lot too. Like, I don't think we get. Yeah, when you start getting into some of that sort of supernatural stuff, you start running into some weird stories.
They'll steal your penis. I'm just gonna let that.
Oh no!
Actually,
gird your loins,
man. Gird your loins. Anytime you're dealing with the paranormal, you should be girding your loins at all times. That's a good idea.
A supposed curse that Togoloshi can lay upon you. Yes. It'll sneak up and steal your penis, and you'll be flat like a Ken doll down there, or you'll have a penis, but it'll be like a ghost. Yeah. Like you can see through it.
Like dude, and just even if you look at like the abductee movement, like even through the 50s and the 60s, that was a big part of it, was that men were being abducted for their seed.
Oh yeah, and that persists to the modern.
Yeah. Even the modern, you'll see it there too.
Like our common joke is, gird your loins, they're coming for your seed.
Since you mentioned that, I couldn't forgive myself. I let this go. You said you'll have a ghost penis. Not many people knew the movie Ghost Dad. Bill Cosby was actually filming Ghost Penis on the side.
That's funny. What?
That was that Ghost Penis was actually Bill Cosby's go-to move.
Yeah.
Apparently so.
Yeah, the paranormal gets adult real quick.
It really, especially when you go into the weirder areas.
Oh man, the thing is, the stuff on the surface is so weird that, like, when I start digging deeper and find like erotica, is where I start to check out.
Like, you want to talk about weird? Like, when you were researching the Men in Black, did you get into the Women in Black stuff at all?
No, I did not. That's a great segue.
I've been waiting for that the entire conversation. A little bit of this whole sexist concept of men in black. How come there's no women in black? Like, there's some sort of paranormal glass ceiling going on.
Well, my friend, let me correct those assumptions.
Sorry. No, you actually, you ran into that. Because so many times people talk about the Men in Black stories, they don't get into like women in black stories, which there is a lot of accounts of like women G-men-esque people showing up. Again, gird your loins, gentlemen, because from like the 50s and 60s, that seems to be like the vast majority of the stories. They're after men's seed. When they're here, they're aliens. Generally, the thought is like people account that they're showing up. They romance men, and then they disappear into the stars.
And make sure you check out the merch store for some cool designs we have there. The shirt up on the screen is actually the one I'm wearing now. Help support the podcast, and link will be in the episode description. The aliens
But-
must not know how easy it is to actually get a man seed. You don't have to do all that.
No, you don't have to try that hard.
But please tell
Right.
the story about the necklace.
Okay. So a lot of people know about like Benton, who is shortly after who's a guy who wrote one of the earliest books on the Men in Black story. So he has So he writes this book on the Men in Black. It's one of the earliest stories of it. His Men in Black story is pretty fanciful, where he's like researching the UFOs and like 3 Men in Black show up and they like walk through the walls and their eyes glow and all that. So it's really weird. But anyway, so his family, when he was a kid, was plagued by this woman in black actual type entity that would show up in their house and was dressed in all black, long black hair, could go through walls, would haunt the house, and at one point even turned and morphed into this she-bat looking thing and was trying to get its hands on a necklace, a coin necklace that his cousin wore. I do believe it was his cousin. That was like this coin necklace. One night, it was like adamantly trying to get this necklace thing that it had, but it was like haunting him, their whole family prior to that.
Oh, wow.
I told you it got weird quick.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
That's a good
No, I did. I said she turned into a she-bat. I did.
Oh, okay.
No, I did. Yeah, she turned into like a giant bat entity with wings. Was what happened like the night. Like this thing would be seen standing outside of their house. It would like be seen in their house, and then one night, like it like decides to just confront his little cousin and turns into this she-bat looking thing with wings and just tries to grab this necklace from some protective necklace that the cousin has.
That's one of the first stories that made me start examining, could the Men in Black be vampires? I don't think so, but it made me ask the question.
But going to like another story too, like of Women in Black too, like John Keel, who's very famous for investigating like the Mothman stories in Point Pleasant in 1967 and 66 to 67. What a lot of people don't know about him is after he visits there, many of the witnesses that came forward to talk about the Mothman story, the Mothman sightings they were visited afterwards by a woman in a black like pantsuit, like dress suit with a clipboard that pretended saying she was John Keel's secretary. She said, "Oh, I'm here to do some follow-up questions," and she asked a bunch of demographic questions about the family, and then would start asking questions about their sightings. And there were several people in West Virginia and even in Ohio that reported seeing this woman. And then these families would reach back out to John Keel to say, "Hey, your secretary stopped by." And then John Keel was like, "I don't have a secretary."
Yeah, that's wild. Now, could that have just been a fanatic fan, someone who was just really into the story,
that was able to know exactly every single family that he encountered? Whenever there was no internet.
When you got a good point, you got a good point.
Theoretically, maybe possible if they stole one of Keel's journals, which one could probably do. But at the same time, it also echoes some of the problems that Wesley Strieber has had, where he's another paranormal author. And there's lots of accounts of basically Men in Black taking on his identity and then doing things. Like there are accounts of him showing up at conferences in towns that he was not in at that time and could prove he was not in at that time. But according to the conference people, he was there giving a show at the time where he's talking about how anyone who believes in UFOs is an idiot. I can't believe you guys bought my book. Things like that. And these are documented things with tons of witnesses. And there's accounts of him like going out on town and doing embarrassing things and causing scenes. And he can prove he was not in that town when this happened.
Good Lord. So the Men in Black just essentially are still just shrouded in mystery, but instead of being, excuse me, shrouded in mystery with the ufology, they're shrouded in mystery with the paranormal as a whole.
Yeah. Almost to a lesser degree, but not by a whole lot. And I think that that's a detail that a lot of people miss when they look into it. It's really a situation that goes well beyond ufology. And
okay, well, I'm going to ask you this.
Beyond ufology.
I usually like to get some advice. The last show you guys were on, you gave me great advice for shadow people, which you check it out, guys. Merch store, link in the description. But I want to ask you, both you, your advice on either how you should react or how you should interact if you are ever approached by a man in black.
Don't let him in your house.
I was talking about a whole series of warding tests I was wanting to try before this interview started.
Okay. Don't let him in your house, and don't go to the Waffle House with him. A lot of stories of them literally like inviting people out to diners and stuff, and then weird stuff starts happening.
Okay. There is a whole series of things that I have a checklist of things I want to try if one ever shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And first, don't give them anything, even if they request it. Do not accept anything, even if requested. A lot of people theorize that if you use humor, you can confuse them and kind of glitch them out.
Yep, tell them a joke.
And something I really want to try is to throw fireworks out there. If you look at folklore, there's this whole vein of this sort of, I usually utilize the word daemon to just be this overarching statement, but it basically is what ancient people would refer to as fae, spirits, tricksters, demons, but not devils, and things along those lines. And one of the universal warding things that you see cross-culturally are mirrors in fireworks. And I really want to see if I just throw out a thing of fireworks, if they would just run off into the night. So I actually was asking my wife earlier today if I could keep a thing of fireworks by the door, and she reluctantly said yes.
Just if you see a man in black, throw a firecracker. Also, have a buddy.
Have a buddy.
Work on a buddy system at all times. They can't get you if there's two of you.
Fair enough. Guys, that was really fun. Although the Men in Black are one of the most perplexing things to discuss because there's not a lot of legitimate stories out there.
You got to dig. You got to dig to find them.
You got to dig. You'll find. Well, I mean, if you look at, you will find stories of Men in Black if you dig. Look for books. You know, it's hard sometimes when you're looking for the internet, because if you want my opinion, I think it's part of it. You'll find the core stories, but if you look for books about the Men in Black, you will find a treasure trove of stories that has never made it to the internet.
Which is weird.
And probably intentional.
Yeah. Well, you know what? To be fair, some of these people, I'm sure, are selling them on the internet, but only on their website, and they're probably still using GeoCities.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. But you'll run into yeah.
Gentlemen, they know about your podcast, Talking with Shadows. They know about your YouTube channel, One Candle Society. Just let them know again, where can the people find you?
You guys can find us on YouTube under One Candle Society. You guys can find our podcast on all major platforms, Talking with Shadows. We're on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Play, Podbean.
We're on iHeartRadio?
Yeah, we're on iHeartRadio.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, 7% of our downloads come from iHeartRadio.
Sweet.
Yeah. I'm surprised they haven't kicked us off for what we talk about, but it is, you guys put us on there, or you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're everywhere.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Always knowledgeable. Thanks for coming on, and
thank you.
Everybody, thanks for listening. Peace and love.
Yeah, thank you for having us on. We super appreciate it, man.
Yeah, we always have a blast with you, man.
You're awesome, man. You're honest, man. Your podcast